Good evening, members of Synod. It's great to see the conversation and renewing connections, making new friends happening. And sometimes this business gets in the way of that. And we wonder what is our main purpose for gathering and have we got the reason all wrong. But we won't go any further with that. I would like to announce that the ballot for the election of the members of the Standing Committee has now closed. So if you haven't got onto the app yet, you're too late. You'll get another chance tomorrow to elect the Assembly membership, but the Standing Committee ballot is closed. And I hope everybody had an informative and good conversations in their electives in the various groups that you went to. And one of those electives was actually about prayer. And someone said, why do you want to have an elective about prayer at a synod meeting? But it was actually an encouraging time for those who attended, and I now call on the ex-moderator, Sue, who led that workshop, to pray a prayer that came out of it for us.
Thank you, moderator. This is a communal prayer that's been put together for right now. It's only short. Let's pray. Lord of the Church, as you gather us together from country and city, we thank you for your grace that has preserved and protected us in COVID times. Inspire and help us work together so your world might know your love. Hear those things voiced and unvoiced as we discuss and discern the way forward for your church. We pray with confidence in you. Amen.
Thank you. And we're now into an information session of this meeting. And this is about presbyteries. The year of 2020 has seen all three presbyteries in the Synod engage in mission, pastoral care and many other supports of congregations in their care. And we will now hear the reports from the three presbyteries. There are no proposals relating to the presbytery reports, so this is for information, but there will be an opportunity to ask questions at the end of each report. So ready and waiting are Graham and Steph from the Generatepresbytery, and they will bring their report to us now.
Moderator and members of Synod, thanks for the opportunity to bring this report. Generatepresbytery has some very clear hopes and goals. We want to keep our primary focus on mission and discipleship that leads to conversion growth and disciples being made, leaders being empowered, churches being planted and congregations being renewed and growing. And we sum up this in our sort of taglines, which are passionate disciples, courageous leaders, renewed congregations. The full printed report has been out in the reports, and you'll be pleased to know that pretty much says most, if not all, of what we want to say. So Steph and I are only going to talk very briefly about four things: congregations, hub leaders, task groups, and the wider church. Congregations, in Generate we have around 118 congregations, and we keep reminding ourselves that Generate Presbytery does not exist for itself, but we are about mission. We exist to serve, resource and have oversight of our congregations and leaders. And like other presbyteries, we have some amazingly committed and faithful people who serve the church so well. Some of our congregations are growing and thriving, but like other presbyteries, there are challenges of declining numbers, ageing members, and as we've seen, property maintenance. And so one of the things we're working towards is providing a very clear process as we support all our congregations to move into renewal, whatever that means for them. Hub leaders. We're very thankful for the 5 hub leaders who lead, support, resource congregations across the state. We hope that these leaders would be able to build teams and focus on pastoral care and renewal. Now, the hub leaders have been doing a fantastic job, but the reality is that much of their time has been spent on reviews, placements, and the never-ending list of pastoral issues that seem to arise in congregations. So we've recently reviewed our hub model, and we are hoping in the year to ramp up the whole focus on renewal and particularly on building teams to do the work of ministry.
Thanks, Graham. One of the things we looked at as a standing committee was that in order to achieve some of the imperatives that we had or the big problems that we were facing, we needed some people to look deeply into them and to come up with real solutions that we could actually action. And so we have come up with a number of task groups. Now, these are short-term, long-term, infinite, but they've all been given a brief along with their time frame, and that brief has helped them to produce. So, for example, in 2019, the media task group was tasked with helping to resource congregations. We were hearing from many that they were struggling to get preachers on a Sunday, for example. And yet we had other churches within the life of the presbytery who would film their services and put them online. And so that media task group began to form a library which is being called Easy Sunday. And I think by God's grace, we launched Easy Sunday the week before we went into lockdown. And so online services were made easy for a number of congregations who wouldn't have been able to resource that themselves. That media task group is paused until we need them again. But for now, their work is done. We've also had a leadership pipeline task group, and they've been looking at what does it look like for us to do this thing we called raising leaders. How do we actually do that? How do we partner alongside period of discernment, formation, ministers who need to grow into their next season of ministry? And so that task group has been looking at that whole pipeline, and we're really excited to see that launch this year. As Graham alluded to, the renewal task group has just kicked off, and they have a big task ahead of them, working out how do we actually renew congregations, come back to us with some solutions, some options, some possibilities. And we're really looking forward to what we see in that space. The church planning task group is going to be an ongoing task group for us because we need new churches. We need new expressions of faith and community where people can come in and experience God and His love. And so that task group has been started a while ago, but we've seen a number of churches already planted. They talk with church planters, they do assessments, they work through all that process on behalf of the wider presbytery, and it's really exciting to see their work. Obviously, like every presbytery, we hold presbytery meetings and we do those things, and they're great and they're wonderful and they're fun and they're full of food and laughter. But beyond that, the presbytery is also served by an incredible team, a standing committee which not only meets monthly, but then diligently between meetings is so gracious with their time and their wisdom and their thoughts, and we really appreciate that. The PRC has actually gone so long we have new membership now, which is exciting to see that new people are stepping into those spaces and helping to resource. And beyond that, along with every other presbytery, we have one person on everything, on every committee, on everything like that. And it's really exciting to see the number of people who are saying, yeah, I can get involved. I can get involved in the work of the wider church. I can come alongside that educational thing or that formation or that ministry opportunity, that property committee that needs somebody. We are so blessed that so many people have stepped up and said we want to be part of the wider church. We've also connected more broadly with the wider Uniting Church around the country through our relationship with Propel Network. And in June this year, I believe, we actually held 4 webinars. And these were around our shared core focus areas of evangelism, discipleship, raising leaders, and planting and renewing churches. And these 4 webinars were held over 4 weeks. We had panellists from around the country who were practitioners and shared very practically stories of what it looked like in their context to be able to do these things. It was engaged with by people, I think, in every state across the country, and it was a really exciting time. Those webinars and bonus resources are still available on our website, and councils are using them to go through and train and learn and explore what that means in their context. Lastly, I just want to say that we've been really privileged to be part of a joint presbytery and synod meetings monthly that have been really helpful spaces to be able to share and bounce things off and have you thought of this and did you realise this and all of those spaces. And so we wanted to thank the other office bearers from the other presbyteries and the synod team for creating that space where as a presbytery we can interact both with the synod and the other presbyteries in hopefully really helpful ways. We're open to answering some questions if there are any, moderator.
Thank you, Graham and Steph. Are there any questions of Graham and Steph about their report, either the written report or what they've said this evening? No, well, thank you for your time and blessings to you as you continue to care for the congregations in many ways as those that you work with. The next presbytery that we are going to hear from is Wimmera Presbytery, and Trevor Phillips and Diane Holden are going to present that to us tonight.
Thank you, moderator, and good evening to all members of Synod. It's wonderful to be able to stand here and tell you a little bit about our journey so far. I'm madly crossing things off my list as I listened to Graham and Steph explain what their presbytery's been doing, and I said, well, I can't say that because he said that and I can't say that. But the reality is, of course, is that we share quite a number of common hopes. And like Generate, we have a printed report out there, and I would encourage you to read that, and I'm not going to directly address that in this, but tell you a little bit about our journey so far. We're a little bit behind where Generate was, but we're catching up. But it means that some of the things we'd like to do, we haven't quite got there yet. We started off in November of 2019 and entered into that particular year with a great deal of enthusiasm, and we hit our first March meeting, and one of the things the members of our presbytery really wanted to do was reaffirm all those that had been elected into positions. So all positions became vacant again and we were re-elected. And so when I look back at our history, we kind of start and think we really started our work in March. And we really were enthusiastic about what we wanted to do, and then suddenly we couldn't meet anybody. And so some of the things we had really hoped to achieve within the 2020 space, we become the hopes and visions for what we want to achieve in the 2021 space. But that's not to say that we sat on our hands and did nothing. A wonderful standing committee, dedicated people, were initially meeting face to face once a month, and we decided that in the COVID time, because it's really hard to get a lot of work done on Zoom, that we would actually meet bi-monthly. And so for the period, and still are, we meet twice a month to get all the processes in place, talk about all the things we need to do. We've been focusing, as we've been building the presbytery, on getting to know who is in the presbytery and what their needs are. And so a lot of our time at the moment has been spent in pastoral nurturing, finding out where the needs and the hopes are. Again, because COVID's been a little bit in the way, a lot of that's been done in email form and phone conversations, and we're really looking forward to being able to get back out and meet face to face with our churches. We currently have about 78 active congregations, and we're still facing those issues as many rural congregations are, with having the property report comes out. We're dealing with all sorts of pastoral questions about what viability of a congregation actually means, what is viable and what is not, where they can worship, what worship is, what it looks like, one of the wonderful things to come out in the presbytery over the COVID time is people have discovered so many more ways to be community. Just as in the Generate group, we've had some churches who've really ramped up and decided that they can be a big presence in online forms. We've had other churches which have decided that actually for many of their members, online's not so easy, and have redeveloped written and published resources for them to engage with. Wonderful stories we've had fed back, as the moderator was talking earlier, where some congregations, having printed resources, have been able to drop them in letterboxes, hand them across the back fence, engage with people, spread the word. So even in a time where we haven't really been able to spend time shaking hands and passing the hugs and all the rest of those things, we've been able to create community. And Presbytery has been pleased to be able to stand behind our congregations and help resource them in the things that we do. I've asked Diane to come up, and she's just going to spend a few minutes giving her side of the story of what it's like to be in the Standing Committee.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Diane Holden from Enfield, and I'm on the Presbytery Standing Committee, which is a new venture for me in a new introduction into a different level of church governance, I guess. And yeah, it's been a ride, that's for sure. I guess some of the highlights for me in what we've been doing within Wimmera, even coming up with our name was a journey in itself, and I was very grateful for the grace of the Anamatna people who allowed us to use that word. We were conscious that our presbytery covers many First Peoples nations and didn't want to exclude anyone on purpose, but I think just that whole opportunity to be in conversation and to choose a first-person word for our name was a sign of our covenanting relationship, and that was a really important and positive step forward for us right at our inception, and that name was passed by our group and then by Standing Committee back in March. And it encapsulates so much of what we want to achieve as Presbytery, and there are bits about that in the report. And then following on from that, I guess another highlight, I was quite heavily involved as a member of Standing Committee on getting our vision statement together and trying to bring together all the threads of our diverse congregations across urban and rural, across the theological spectrum, and all those other areas of diversity. But being able to sit with that and come up with our catchphrase to, I got it wrong in the car and I created this silly thing, gather, connect and go. Sorry, my brain's very weary at this time of the day. So to gather, connect and go in the power of the Spirit. And we look at everything we do through that lens, about gathering as presbytery, connecting as congregations, but also with our agencies, with our chaplains, the other parts of our communities, and then going in the power of the Spirit to be God's disciples and showing the love and service of Jesus in our place. So they were two fairly large things that excited me. I'm excited by our diversity, but I'm also excited by our commonality, and that is being the children of God, the disciples of Jesus. And so regardless of what our diversity is, we can all come to that place together to serve together. I think that's about all I wanted to share. It's good to be able to not only celebrate with our congregations and communities, but I think the privilege of being with those where things aren't working out quite so well too. I think we sometimes overlook the importance of that, but to be able to sit with people in the mess, I think is a real privilege and important part of our ministry as well. And like came up earlier, we don't want that to be all of the work that we do, but there are times in COVID with property and all of these things that, you know, there are many congregations questioning their viability, and having to be able to sit in that mess, I think, is a really important place to be. So thank you for your time.
So where to now? We've just completed our PD for our regional coordinators. We've decided to create 3 geographic regions within the Wimmera Presbytery. We are very grateful to the work that the Generatepresbytery did, and we were very grateful to be able to look at their resources as they developed their hub leaders, and we've been able to see what's been good. I'd be fascinated to hear their review on that before we kick ours off. But we've decided to divide into 3 regions, and we will be very shortly appointing our 3 regional coordinators to help with all those pastoral and connection type things. We're also in the next part of the year hoping to develop our church regrowth and renewal teams. We are also looking at leadership paths and leadership training and how we bring people into those roles. So that's our hope for the next little while. I thank you for your time, and if there are questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Trevor and Diane about the life of the Wimmera Presbytery? Yes, Maria, if you'd like to make your way to the microphone.
Hi, I'm Maria from Port Augusta. I wanted to ask a question to the other, but I wasn't quick enough, but I'm here. 2 things. I'm part of the Congress Fellowship, and whilst we am listening to what you guys are talking about with the presbyteries, we are in your presbytery, I believe. And the question I was going to ask is, like, when are you guys going to come and consult with us? Because again, we feel like we've been left out. And the same question I was going to say over here, with the other, and with Generate, who's got a big Arnungu Pinjara, Young Pinjara group in their zone. How are you going to work with them? And I also, you got the guys from Murray Bridge. So how do we fit into this conversation, and when is the conversation you're going to have with us? Because we feel like we've been left out again.
Thank you for your question. We're very aware of our commitment to our First Nations, our First Peoples. We've had Rani as our UAICC representative on the Standing Committee, who has been very good at keeping us informed on the issues that have been important. Rani unfortunately has missed a few steps because she was unwell, but the answer to that question is as soon as we can. There have been some restrictions, as you're aware, through COVID-19, which has limited our ability to come and meet in groups. But we are open to come as soon as you would like us to come.
We will welcome you to come. And the other question that I had was in the naming of Wimmera. While that's an Anyamatna name, there's about 7 or 8 other language groups that's in our zone. And I think, you asked the people, I know the story behind it now. In fairness to the rest of our tribes, you should have, at least had a conversation with a group of us instead of just going to the one group. Because, Aboriginal people, we're already divided. And I think, again, a consultation either through the regional council could have taken place. And if you did, we didn't hear about it.
Yeah.
And so obviously there's a communication breakdown, and we want to try and fix it.
Sure. Yeah. I'll let Diane answer that one.
Look, I'll respond to that one because that was pretty much my project. We did try to approach Mark Kickett and Ian Dempster and a whole pile of people to get this conversation flowing, and it became a difficult conversation to have, which is why Rani ended up driving it to a great extent. We were very conscious that in choosing one word, we didn't want to cause division or exclusion, but we knew that we couldn't necessarily have a word that was going to meet the needs of everybody, and we were very conscious of that, particularly as white woman. And so Rani certainly became a trusted advisor in that space for us. And then it came to the point we were actually under considerable time pressure to get these things into place. It was a journey that we tried over about 2 or 3 months, and it became tricky to find those inroads. So all I can do is our aim was not to cause any offence or any division. We tried our best through the resources that we had at our disposal at the time.
Now, I fully understand. So that then made me realise that we do have a communication problem, because I think this is something that we should all have been privileged to have the conversation, because after all, Rani lives here in Adelaide.
Yeah.
You know, there's at least 7 or 8 other Aboriginal people who sit on the regional council and on the executive, but not at any time did any of this conversation come down to regional council or to executive.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? No. Well, thank you, Trevor and Diane, for bringing the report from the Wimmera Presbytery, and we wish you blessings as you continue in your work. So, lastly, we come to the Presbytery of Southern SA, and I see Diane and Max and Ian coming to the microphone. So, thank you for bringing your written report, and invite you to speak to it now.
Thank you, moderator. Good evening, everybody. Just before I start the official bit here that Diane thinks I'm going to talk about, just listening to those other 2 reports reminded me of something I noticed late last year when I saw the edition of New Times that had the page in it for each presbytery, and then I looked at the calendar that's got a page for each presbytery, and I am struck already by how each presbytery has its own personality. And that's reflected in the things we talk about and how we talk and all that kind of thing, and it's showing again tonight, I think. It's just a little reflection. Anyway, Presbytery of Southern SA. The presbytery stretches from Port Macdonald and Gambier East in that direction, about as far as you can go and still be in South Australia, up to here and Pilgrim in the city. All the stuff that's not in Wimmera, from about Henley Beach Road and south and out to the border. And it's interesting that we're starting this presentation with our geographic description, and you'll see perhaps why that's significant in a little while. But we cover, like everybody else, small rural congregations through the Mallee and the Murray areas, along the coasts. We include congregations in regional towns and the Adelaide Hills and the suburbs of Adelaide. I'm not going to go and sit down because we're a kind of a double act here.
We acknowledge the First Peoples as traditional custodians of this land and waters of this area. As a presbytery, we have met on the land of the Peramang and Kaurna people, and will meet on Ngarrindjeri land next month. And we pay respects to their elders, past and present, and to emerging leaders. We regret that we have not done well in connecting with our First Peoples as a presbytery, and we pray that in the power of the Spirit we may all work together for better communication and for justice and reconciliation. The geographical area we cover includes the southern part of Adelaide, and this and the Fluria Peninsula is where nearly all of our ministers and Ministry of Pastor placements are located. In other regions, there are very few paid ministry leaders who belong to our presbytery. There are many good lay leaders, but there is a gap. This area is of course shared with Generatepresbytery, and already we have had some shared responsibilities. We're looking forward to a shared celebration this weekend with the commissioning of Shirley Alexander into Ministry of Pastoral with the congregations of Southwest Fluria, Yankalilla, Delamere and Range Road, and Simon Dent and from Generate and I will be leading that commissioning service.
So one of our first responsibilities was this business of choosing a name. And there was a range of thoughtful and creative ideas suggested across a whole lot of different kinds of areas of interest. Some were predictably serious, some were a bit playful, very creative, I might add. But in the end, with conversations around the place involving our congregations as well as standing committee and all of those kinds of people, what emerged out of those conversations was to go with a geographic name. And the most common suggestion, yes, was one that reflected the geographic area that we covered. It seemed that for many of our people, being part of a geographical area was a significant thing. So the name that was chosen reflects that. So Presbytery of Southern SA, it's a bit of a mouthful. If you want to save some of those syllables and work with initials, take the first letter of each word and you'll come up with POSSA. And that's, when you hear that around the place, that's us. Our congregations are led by lay ministry teams, Ministry of Pastor appointments, Minister of the Word and deacons in both full-time and part-time arrangements, and some with multi-staff teams. We bring all of those together, as the basis of union says, encouraging every congregation to fulfil their high calling in Christ. And we include schools, hospitals, aged care settings where chaplains and other ministry leaders offer significant leadership in worship, witness and service.
As has already been said, COVID, of course, played a great part in the year and how we were able to work as a presbytery. It seemed like we were just starting when we ran into that brick wall of COVID. But our congregations have faced the challenges of COVID in their various contexts with imagination and perseverance. Some of them have introduced new resources that are used widely. Some are connecting in new ways with other congregations, accessing recordings and online worship. And many have changed their normal way of worshipping and offering pastoral care in ways that will last into the future. It has been an encouraging surprise for many congregations to discover they can offer online worship and offer support to those who cannot attend. For example, Adelaide West have added an online-only service. Padthaway kept us entertained and amused with their newsletter, which maintains connections with Generate and POSSA congregations and celebrates strong connections with their local community. Bridgewater made such strong connections online, they have welcomed new members from far away. The Corner prepared a Christmas production on video in a COVID-safe manner and had a movie night so people could watch it safely. At Pilgrim, the choir has adapted to COVID requirements and continue offering their musical gifts, albeit in a more spaced out way.
I like the spaced out. Around all this COVID stuff, we have been able to meet for 2 presbytery meetings, although the third one we had was just after that short, sharp lockdown in November. So with all the uncertainty around that, that didn't happen. We're looking forward to a third one in a month's time. And in between, the work of the presbytery is being supported by a standing committee which met twice a month during 2020. After our first time worshipping together, with preaching from Dave Williams and music led by the Blackwood Band, the focus of our first meeting, straight after that, was the business of choosing the name and establishing some basic structure. This included electing members of our PRC, establishing the idea of a leadership development team that has responsibilities around POD, the application to candidate, oversight of candidates and ministry of pastor. And this team has been learning on the run a bit as we have responded to conversations with those engaged in POD and received and progressed an application to candidate. The chair of the PRC is the Reverend Laurie Linggood. He was appointed at our meeting in September. This meeting dealt with some other ordinary matters like presbytery rules, but we also had an engaging presentation around how congregations might respond to the COVID business and the collective trauma that was around that. Tanya Whitwer and Christy Capper did that for us from pastoral and missional perspectives. So, having established some basic structure and processes for the presbytery, we now continue to seek to engage a wider range of presbytery members and others in the work of the presbytery.
The highlight of our second meeting, though, was our opening worship, at which Sean Gilbert preached, and then we were able to celebrate the first ordination for the presbytery, that of Reverend Hayden Lush. Hayden was then inducted into the Mount Barker congregation the following day. At this meeting, we also approved the ordination of Cyrus Kung, which then took place at Cityview Uniting Church, but which most people attended online. This was originally planned for November the 22nd, but lockdown saw us having to postpone this for a week. The presbytery was invited to be present at the opening of the UCity building where Cityview meet. And we've also been pleased to celebrate inductions and commissioning services as congregations and ministers and pastors have started a new time of shared mission and ministry. It's actually a really difficult thing around inductions and commissioning. We want the presbytery to be there, but we often don't have room. So we advertise it, we let people know it's happening, hoping they will pray for what's happening and say, if you want to come, register, but I'm sorry, most of you can't come. We look forward to actually being able to welcome everyone who wants to come to inductions and commissioning services. We have welcomed new candidates and also marked conclusions of placements. Developing our communication capabilities is an important next step, building on the many email newsletters and a Facebook page that have been at the centre of our communication so far. Learning new technology on the go has stretched some of us, and the volume of work has limited opportunities for developing new skills. But we do recognise that we need to develop some other ways of communicating as well. After our budget was approved at the March meeting, and included staffing, we were pleased to be given approval for a presbytery minister placement. The position has been advertised and the JNC are ready to begin the work of discernment. In the meantime, we have been pleased to be able to have Ian Dow providing supply in this presbytery minister role. And Ian, we thought we would give you a chance to share some of what you've been doing.
Well, I've been travelling the roads of... Oh, I got it wrong already. I've been travelling the lands of the Buandik and Binjali, the Ghana, Meru, Paramank, Nagat and Narinjari, and the new presbytery of southern SA, to visit congregations, support and say g'day. If you ask me if I know a church and how it would rate, I'll say, listen, I've visited every church in the south of the state. 'Cause you know where this is going. I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere, man. As presbytery minister, man. Went out there to share, man. Gave them lots of care, man. I've been everywhere. I've been to Hare Street, Hawthorne, at St Andrews by the sea, Seacliff, Seaford, Colonel Lighton, Wolseley, Upper Sturt, Unley, Glengarry, Menengi, Hathaway, Christchurch, Church of the Trinity, Myponga, Mypolonga, Tormundonald Corner, Millicent, Milo. Had to drive a mile for. I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere, man. Lots of kilometre, man. Went out there to share, man. Gave them lots of care, man. I've been everywhere. Aldinger, All Saints, Malvern, McLarendale, Gilkey, Yankalilla, Marion, Warradale, Roseville, Rose Park, Littlehampton, Old Nollunga, Newland, Vermont, Nollunga and Wollonga, Murray Bridge, Bridgewater, Mount Barker and Adair, Beachport and Adair. Been there and everywhere. I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere, man. All over Possa, yeah, man. Went out there to share, man. Gave them lots of care, man. I've been everywhere. I can tell you the key change doesn't make it any easier. Coon, up and Coomandoo, Karoonda, Geranium, Tintinara, Tantanoola, Brighton, Strathalman, Canberra East, Ad West, Nairn, Port Elliot, Emmon Valley, Mitcham Village, Murrayville, Malang, but Ashmore, Ashcroft, Blackwood and City View, Rockley, Ralpham, Pilgrim, coming soon to visit you. I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere, man. Well, almost everywhere. I didn't go to Wimbledon, man. Breathe the southern air, man. I've been everywhere. As long as it's south of Henley Beach Road, I've probably been there.
That's pretty impressive, Ian. Thank you very much. It's been an interesting 15 months since the presbytery came into being at our last synod meeting. Whatever we might have imagined about how we would go about setting up a presbytery was reset by COVID. Some things, though, remain constant, and we continue to give thanks to God for God's faithfulness as we seek to be Christ's body in the power of the Holy Spirit. Moderator, it's our report. Thank you.
Thank you to Diane and team. And we could start a sing-along, but I couldn't get the words out quickly enough anyway. Are there any questions? Were there any congregations left out of the list? If there are no questions, I thank you for your report and thank all of the presbyteries for their updates, so that it's part of us being one church together as we hear and encourage and pray for what each of us are doing in our respective presbyteries. And we give thanks to God for the people who offer their leadership in this way, and for those in the congregations and other ministries who support their presbyteries to care for them all and for each other and for all of us, really. Thank you all. We, believe it or not, are actually running ahead of time. But, you know, I'm sure you're not ready to go home yet. So what we thought we'd do is continue our conversation about Proposal 2. Those of you